Hello everyone, welcome to Science Club. My name is Slavka and I work at the Laylaw Library. Usually during Science Week we would be in the library celebrating Science Week and conducting lots and lots of experiments. However, unfortunately the library, like many other places in Victoria, is closed at the moment. So Science Week is being presented to you online with lots of different activities and experiments. And hopefully you'll get a chance to try a couple of them out. Now today we will be looking at different things that float. So for example, a lot of plastic floats, packaging, looking at even netting, how that can float and how that can support a plant. And the plants that we will be using today for our floating garden, they're just little cuttings. So I have a couple here that I just cut from my garden, and if you've got some herbs, they can grow in your garden as well. And you can pop your plants straight into the water, but if you want to, what you can do is pop them into a little container like this. This one has some potting mix in it. If you are using potting mix, just make sure that you wear your gloves and make sure you wash your hands, because there's lots and lots of bacteria and good things that will feed the plant, but they're not very good for your hands or if you put them into your mouth. But always have a grown-up with you. So today we will have a look at what are floating gardens, how they are used around the world and why they are important, and we will see whether we can make one ourselves. A floating garden is like an island which is made from buoyant or materials which can float on water. Now these include bamboo, bark, coconut fibres, but they can also include man-made materials like polystyrene and even empty drink bottles with the cap still on, just to hold the air in. Now, the plants help to clean and purify the water. They also provide a really rich source of nutrients for the waterways and a really safe habitat for animals and birds. There are many communities who use floating gardens to produce necessary food, and the sort of foods that can be grown in a floating garden include tomatoes and corn, peppers, chilies, squash, and lots of herbs. There are floating gardens in many parks, including the Royal Botanic Gardens. They provide a safe habitat for many animals such as ducks, platypus, snakes, lizards, frogs, turtles, and many more. Before we start on our experiment, here are some additional programs which the library has available during National Science Week. One of the activities that is lots and lots of fun is making a prediction or a hypothesis about things that float. And I have a few things here. Maybe we can work it out together. Now, I have some leaves. Do you think they'll float or sink? You ready? What's happening to them? They are floating. They float on top of the water. What about, I have a magnet. This is made out of metal. Do you think it will sink or do you think it will float? You ready? Oops. Sunk straight to the bottom. What about something like, a marble? Sinks straight to the bottom. What about a plastic pig? That will float. And you might want to do some of these experiments at home and make a little prediction whether it's going to sink or whether it's going to float. So that's a fun activity to have. I have a big bowl, but you can do the same experiment in just a little container, and you can make hypotheses. Now, to make a floating garden, you can use any materials that you like. Now, I just used a container, some netting. This netting, I think, may have come from something like mandarins or onions or something like that. And just put a rubber band around it, and it will hold our plant with the roots. And I can add a few more. I have over here. And just pop them into our water, and that will float quite happily. But like we saw in some of our video or some of our pictures, a lot of people actually put their plants in a container in the dirt, and then it floats on a waterway. So it can be like a lake, it can be a river, not a fast flowing river, and we'll pop them in there. And usually people will grow plants on water where there's not enough land. Usually the land will be reserved for housing and for plants and for food. If there's water, then that can float on water. Now, I had this plant for a while. It's time to replant it, but I wanted to show you. Can you see the roots? You see the roots in there? How they're basically ready to be planted into a pot plant. So I will probably do that a little bit later on and put another cutting in there. And this has survived quite happily. I think I should have replanted it a while ago now. But it just goes to show that the roots... So thank you for joining us for Science Week, and I certainly hope that you have a chance to make your own little floating garden. And next time you do see some netting, rubber band and an old container, you can also make a beautiful floating garden out of it. It doesn't have to sit on water, it can just sit in a container like this, and then when little roots come in, then you can plant it into the garden. So thank you very much for joining us for Science Club and for Science Week. Thank you.